Should I stand, or is that how you typically?
If you like, everyone can, not necessary.
Okay. When I notice awareness, or when I notice a feeling or sensation, I don't notice any difference between the feeling, sensation, and awareness itself. They seem to be the same thing. But that sort of goes against what you're saying this morning, that there's something that is taking place in a field of awareness. But to me, I can't find a difference between experience and awareness. So what am I missing, I guess is my question.
Okay. You're right. All there is to experience is the awareness of it, or the knowing of it. But there is more to awareness than just the sum total of our objective experience. All there is to a movie is the screen, but there is more to the screen than the contents of the movie. So the reason why we... but your observation is absolutely correct.
But can whatever's more, you say that there's more to awareness than the sum total, but can that more, can it be experienced?
Let me just go where I was going before. You're right. We cannot separate any experience from the knowing of it. Just like you cannot peel a movie off a screen. So why do we make this distinction? And it's because almost all people are completely lost in their experience. Lost in their thoughts, feelings, activities, relationships, etc. In other words, for almost all people, there is just objective experience. And the only relief most people get from objective experience is deep sleep. In other words, for most people spend their entire lives without ever noticing that there is something which knows or illuminates experience. In other words, without ever noticing the presence of awareness or consciousness. So it is in response to those people, a normal condition that most people find themselves in, that the teaching first makes this distinction between awareness and its objects. Later in the week, your question will be fully answered, because we will then collapse. As time goes on, we will progressively and increasingly collapse the apparent distance between awareness and its objects. But it is necessary for most people to make this distinction in the first place, because in the absence of this distinction, we are simply lost in experience and suffering as a result. There are just my thoughts, feelings, activities, and relationships. That is most people's experience. And as a result of that, they are going from one object, one activity, one relationship to another, seeking relief, seeking fulfillment, but never finding it, because they're always looking for it in objective experience. So that's why the teaching makes this distinction in at least the first step, this distinction between experience and awareness.
Okay, yeah, and I'm just trying to understand. I obviously know that there's a difference between someone who's completely lost in experience and what I'm experiencing, which is just that, experience and awareness are the same, but they almost seem like they're saying the same thing, because if I'm experiencing experience and awareness as the same thing, it almost sounds like, does that, what I'm saying, does that make any sense? Or?
Well, what is the nature of yourself in between two thoughts or perceptions?
The only thing I can find is, in between two
Thoughts, feelings, or perceptions? Do you cease to exist when a thought vanishes?
it seems like it's always replaced by another thought, sensation.
But there must be a gap between the two thoughts. If there were no gap between the two thoughts, it would be experienced as a single thought.
Yes.
It's experienced as two thoughts or two perceptions because there is a gap between them. Now, what is your experience in that gap?
Well, if it's between two thoughts, then it usually is a perception.
And
a
between
feeling.
two perceptions.
It seems to always be evolving and becoming something new.
But would you agree that all your thoughts, and let's just call it thoughts and perceptions so we don't have to give a long list each time. Would you agree that all your thoughts and perceptions are intermittent? They come and go.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
But do you not experience, but is not your experience one continuous flow?
Yes, it feels
You
like
don't experience your experience is not fragmentary. It's just a seamless flow throughout your whole day.
Yes.
Now, where does the continuity of your experience come from, given that all thoughts and perceptions are discontinuous or intermittent? What is it that gives experience its continuity? There must be something that is continuous in experience.
It feels like it's experience itself that's continuous.
Okay, but what is the nature of experience itself in the absence of thoughts and perceptions? There must be a continuous element in experience itself.
To me, it feels like awareness is something that's completely free and just sort of morphs into different shapes of sensations and perceptions and thoughts and experiences. It's just constantly morphing. And
you're absolutely right.
Right.
All there is to experience is the knowing of it, the awareness of it. So the only substance present in experience is awareness or knowing. And that knowing is continually morphing itself into thinking, feeling, perceiving.
Right. That's what.
But thinking, feeling, and perceiving are not essential to it. It's just like the TV screen is continually morphing into numerous movies, but no particular movie is essential to the screen. There is something called the screen in the absence of movies.
Right.
And the screen is a movie is made up of a series of separate frames. But we don't experience a series of separate frames. We experience one continuous flow. Why? Because what we are seeing, the screen, is continuous. It doesn't come and go. In other words, the apparent continuity of the movie is actually borrowed from the continuity of the screen. There is no continuity in the movie itself. The movie is a series of fragments. Likewise, thoughts and perceptions are a series of fragments. They start and stop. But they borrow their apparent continuity from that which is truly continuous or ever-present in experience, which is awareness.
Right.
And as you rightly say, it is awareness itself that is morphing into all the forms of experience, but is not itself limited to or defined by any particular experience.
And could awareness exist without an experience?
Absolutely, in just the same way that the screen can exist without a movie.
But then wouldn't you be experiencing the lack of experience, and therefore you're experiencing?
No, because the lack of experience, you would never have the experience, I am experiencing the lack of experience. Or if you did have that feeling, if there was a feeling of lack, that lack would itself be an experience.
Right. So then, therefore, you can never have, well, then my original question, which was, can you ever experience without, does awareness exist without experience, was my original question. And it seems like it can't, there has to be an experience.
Why?
Of something.
What makes you think there has to be an experience? What is the experience of deep sleep, for instance?
I have no recollection of deep, that doesn't mean that I'm not experiencing during deep sleep, but I personally have no recollection of it. The only thing I've ever had is I experience, as I'm falling asleep, the whole world going like, and all your senses are turning off, like I've experienced like just the low sound of the room tone.
But have you never said to a friend in the morning, I slept well?
Yes, I've said
And
that. Yeah.
to what experience did you refer?
It's possible that I was simply referring to the fact that my body felt rested in that moment. I don't know, but you do, and there's an experience in that moment that time has passed, or it's not the same moment as it was when I fell asleep. So there is an experience, but it's an experience that's happening in the moment when I'm awake, I think.
In the end, it doesn't really matter whether awareness can exist in the absence of objective experience, because, as you rightly said at the beginning of your question, all there is to experience is awareness. As such, experience is a coloring of awareness, a movement of awareness, or the activity of awareness. So in fact, in experience, there is never anything present other than awareness or knowing itself.
Okay, yeah. And I guess I'm just curious about it, and I'm trying to, it feels like I haven't gotten it all yet. So that must be why I'm asking the question, yeah.
But you understand that all experience is a coloring of awareness.
Yes, it feels like awareness is simply something that's morphing constantly with different colors and feelings.
What is the nature of awareness before it morphs into experience? What is its essential nature prior to its morphing into experience?
I don't know that I've experienced that. Sometimes I can sort of...
The reason you say I haven't experienced it is because there is still a subtle belief in you that the experience of awareness without objects would appear as some subtle object of experience. In other words, you expect it to appear in the same way that all other experiences appear. And because it never appears as even a very subtle object of experience, the mind, which can only know objective experience, says there's no such thing as awareness without objects.
Yeah, that sounds right. I can't even conceive of what something would be without that. Yeah.
No, the mind, you're absolutely right. The mind cannot conceive of what awareness without objects would look like, because the mind, which is limited, superimposes its own limitations on everything that it conceives or perceives, and sees everything in accordance with and as a reflection of those limitations. So you're right, the mind cannot think about awareness without objects. Although it is made of awareness, it cannot think of awareness. In fact, not only can the mind not think of awareness without objects, the mind cannot think of awareness, period. Try now to think of something that doesn't have any objective features.
Yeah, I can only think of a blank space, but that has.
But a blank space is a very subtle object.
Yes.
It is the subtlest of all objects, which is precisely why the traditions tend to use space, as indeed I did this morning, as a metaphor for awareness, because it gives the mind something to visualize. What I should have done, or rather could have done this morning, is having suggested a space or a field, an aware field in which experience arises, in order to give the mind some reference, something to imagine. I could have removed the space-like quality from this presence. So first of all, imagine physical space. Not just the physical space of this room, but imagine the vast physical space of the universe and add the quality of knowing or awareness to it. So imagine now that the physical space in the universe is an aware physical space, and that it is this aware space that is knowing everything that takes place within the space. But now, having added awareness to physical space, now remove physical space. What are you left with?
Just a presence.
Just the awareness aspect. But having removed physical space, it has no dimensions, because you've removed space. But you can't think of that. I can't think of it. So that is why, if we want to visualize and speak of these things, we have to attribute these very subtle qualities to awareness, like emptiness or void or space-like, or all these. None of these words are accurate, but they're all just concessions to the mind that wants to think about or visualize reality. And they are stepping stones for the mind before the mind finally dissolves in its source.
Okay.
Your question will be answered in a more experiential fashion as the week goes on.
Okay, I'm excited.